Now, we're going to get to this question that was sent in. I mean, it's obvious that it came from one of the calendar groups that have been watching our teaching on when a day begins or when the Sabbath begins. It said, so how do you explain the day as presented in Matthew 28:1, day as in dawn? Well, I'm not going to lay all my cards on the table once again, because we're already in the process of putting together part 2, another PowerPoint concerning this topic. We'll get to the word dawn later. But here's how I, or anybody that's educated in word study, would explain it. How do I explain the day as presented in Matthew 28:1? Well, it's going to be a lot different, apparently, than what you've been taught it says. But I'm going to use the Hebrew. I got my Hebrew New Testament here. I'm going to read you that passage right out of Hebrew. I'm not reading from a commentary of Hebrew. I'm going to be reading not a transliterated version, but I'm going to be reading right out of this Hebrew New Testament. Okay? Concerning Matthew 28:1. And I'm also going to pull up the Greek text. Now, I don't want to just use Matthew 28:1. We're going to use every gospel account of this same episode. We're going to look at not only how the day was presented in Matthew 28:1, but we're going to look at Mark chapter 16, verse 2, Luke chapter 24, verse 1, and we're going to look at John chapter 20, verse 1, and see how every one of them are in unison. We're going to look at the Greek text in every one of those and the Hebrew in the first one. And we're going to see how the Hebrew text lines up with the Greek text, but the English text doesn't line up with either of them. That's the problem. I'm going to be pointing out that the day that you're speaking about does not exist in the Greek or the Hebrew text. The words the and day are not even there in the Hebrew text and in the Greek text. Oh, Father. So let's turn to Matthew 28:1, and we'll read it in English first. This is the way that it reads in the scriptures, and many of your English translations will read pretty much the same. Matthew chapter 28 and at verse 1 says, now after the Shabbat, toward dawn on the first day of the week. See that? On the first day of the week. That's what you guys are reading. On the first day of the week, Miriam from Magdala and the other Miriam came to see the tomb. So this daylight to daylight Sabbath keeper is asking me, how do I explain the day as presented in Matthew 28, verse 1? I'm going to look at the Greek text, and then I'm going to read out of the Hebrew New Testament, and we're going to see that the Greek and the Hebrew text here, which doesn't always happen, it doesn't happen often, as a matter of fact, actually line up together. Okay? So let me show you the Greek text first. There we go. Here's Matthew chapter 28 and at verse 1. Look at this. After then, the is added. See this? Plural. It's Sabbaths. Right? It's plural in the Greek text. All right. And the reason that is because there was, when he went into the tomb, we had a high Sabbath when it got dark. A high Sabbath started. And then a seventh day Sabbath was completed during this time period as well. It's pointing out that there were two Shabbats here, not the is added. Okay, so it says, after then Sabbaths, it being dawn, we'll get to that later, toward. It doesn't say that it was dawn, but the Greek text is saying that it was toward that time period when the dawn would come up, because it was still dark, as we're going to see by every account. Toward, and look, you asked me to explain the day as presented in Matthew 28:1. I'm going to explain it to you right here. The first day, the and day is added. That's why you believe what you believe. You are believing where the word has been added to and taken away from. I'm showing you the literal translation from the Greek. The word the and day are added. And also of the week, the is added as well. Let's take out all of the thes and read down through this. After then, the sequence of Shabbats. That's what that is indicating. I'm going to show you in the Hebrew. After the Sabbaths, it being dawn toward, first of week came. Oh, Father. The day is not even mentioned. The is not mentioned in concerning the week either. After then, Sabbaths, it being dawn toward, first of week came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the tomb. The day is gone. Not even there. Now, I'm going to read this out of my Hebrew New Testament. Now remember, it's talking about Sabbath day, plural, in the Greek. And I'm going to read you the English translation of, and then I'm going to read it in Hebrew. All right. It says, this is the way they translated it from the Hebrew text of the New Testament. And after the close of the joint Sabbaths, with it growing light toward the first of the week, Miriam Magdalene and the other Miriam came to observe the grave. Okay, now, if you are following along with me, you'll see that the word dawn in that English text is in italics. So I would just go back and look at the reason why he puts these words in italics. Now I'm going to read it to you in the Hebrew. Listen to this. It says, Va'achar motza, Va'achar motza. Okay, which akar means behind, and motza means dawn or the potential rising of the sun. Motza. Okay, listen. Va'akar motza ha-Shabbat vasha air la ahar va Shabbat. There it is. It's talking about two joint Sabbaths. One started when he went in the tomb and it got dark, high Sabbath. Okay. And then the seventh day Sabbath was completed. That is critical for us to understand. That's why in the Greek text, you don't see the and day. It's not talking about that. Then it goes on to say, Ba'a Marim Ha Magdali Va marim ha akar meaning other. Okay. La raot at aleph ta et aleph ta. Yom is nowhere in this text. The Greek is a translation. It's not the original writing. They translated into Greek and Latin, Aramaic. The original writings were Hebrew. This helps us see that even sometimes these guys that were translating it into the Greek, they brought it over pretty accurately, but much of the time because of their things that they already believed prior to them doing the translating shows and shines through in every corner where something seems to be not right. Go look at the text. Go look at the Greek and Hebrew text. So let's not stop there, though. Okay, let's look at every account of that episode in your scriptures. Let's go to Mark chapter 16. Verses 1 and 2. So the English here seems to contradict what we just read in the Greek and Hebrew concerning the same matters. It seems to contradict, but as soon as we go look at the Greek text, everything fits in. Chapter 16 in Mark, verses 1 and 2. And when the Sabbath was passed, there's one of those two that was being spoken of there. Miriam from Magdala and Miriam, the mother of Yaakov, and Sholomah bought spices to go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, guess what we're going to see when we look at the Greek text? We're not going to see that. Okay. They came to the tomb when it says when the sun had risen. Okay, well, that just contradicts everything we just read back there as well. And we're going to see why. Okay. I'm going to screen share this with you in the Greek, and we're going to do a little Greek word study, and we'll see that it lines up perfectly in the Greek text with what we just read in the English and the Hebrew text concerning Matthew 28:1. Here we are. Mark 16 and that verse 2 in the Greek. Look at this. Here's the English brought straight over from the Greek, and we're going to take a look at a few things here. We're going to look at having risen, right? We're going to take a look at that. But here it says, and very early on the first. We'll look at this word first when we look at this account in John. Okay, but it clearly says that day is added. And very early on the first of the week, day's not there. Very early on the first of the week, they come to the tomb having arisen the sun. Okay. So we're going to take a look here at how they translated this into English from the Greek word number 393, having arisen. Let's look at that. So it means in the Strongs they say to cause to rise. I make to rise, I rise, shine, generally of the sun, and hence Now let's go down to the Thayers. Look at this. Oh, this is huge. So there's our Greek number, and the Thayers gives us some further information about this word. And here we see that this same Greek word is used in the Septuagint in Genesis chapter 3 and at verse 18. Let's go to Genesis chapter 3 and at verse 18. Now remember, they translated it as the sun had risen when they translated it from this Greek word over into the English in the Greek text that we just looked at. That's an error. Okay? We see how it was used to be translated from the Hebrew from the Hebrew Torah to the Greek Torah in Genesis chapter 3 and at verse 18. Verse 18, and the ground shall bring forth thorns and thistles for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. Okay, look at it again. There's our word, bring forth, shall bring forth. Okay, so this word is used as something that will happen in the future that had not yet happened. And the ground shall bring forth thorns and thistles for you. It had not yet happened. So that Greek word in the Greek Torah was used concerning something that had not yet come up, but was about to. Okay, so for them to define it here as having risen makes the word contradict the other two passages that we just read, and we can't have that. So we see how they use that Greek word from a Hebrew point of view. It's something that was going to take place. It had not yet risen, but was about to rise. Okay, sun was about to rise. We can't have the scriptures contradicting one another. And when you study deep enough into the Greek and Hebrew, you'll see that they all were saying the same exact thing. Now, so it's also in the book of Yohanan or John chapter 20. Yohanan chapter 20 and at verse 1. This, by the way, gives the perfect account of when a day begins when you go back and read chapter 19 and 20. It lines up perfectly with everything we just read and the definitions in the word studies as well. Yohanan chapter 20 and at verse 1 says, and on the first day, so there we go with this first day again. We're going to take a look at this word that they translated first, okay? Because it has something to do with the week, okay, not the sun rising. And on the first day of the week, we read in the English, Miriam of Magdala came early to the tomb while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. Now, this doesn't contradict. I want to point something out. In some of the other, in the other Gospels, a couple of them make it sound like this is wrong because you see all of them coming, but in a couple of the accounts, only she came. Well, that's because she went back and told them that the Messiah had risen. That's when they all came together and found out that what she had told them was true. Okay, so you see those two different accounts or two different time periods explained by the one who was writing that particular gospel throughout all of these accounts. It doesn't contradict. It lines up perfectly. Yeah. Hallelujah.
she ran
Yeah.
Shimon and Pippa.
So and you'll see that right there if you keep reading this passage. It tells you then she went and got Shimon and the others and brought them. Okay. So it is lining up perfectly. Now, again, it says on the first day of the week, Miriam from Magdala came early to the tomb while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. Now, I'm going to show you the Greek text here. And guess what isn't there? The same thing that hasn't been in all of these that we've researched. Here we go. Luke chapter 24 and at verse 1 in the Greek. Here's the English words brought over directly from the Greek text. The, however, first day is not there. Let's look at this of the. The definite article. Then it shows you all of these different ways that this word has been used, right? There's a lot of information there. So here we see the, however, first of the week, day is gone. On the first of the week, dawn, very early, to the tomb they came, bringing that they had prepared spices. Let's go up here. Let's look at this first day. What does that English word mean? One. The definition, one. The Thayer's Greek Lexicon, a cardinal number, one. It was day one of the week, and it was still dark. Go read all the passages throughout all of these accounts. It was still dark, and it's called a day. Okay, and what we're going to see, don't take my word for it. Let's go ahead and drive the nail in the coffin here. Let's go back to Luke chapter 22. Beginning at verse 34. This is Yahshua speaking. Look at this account. Verses 34 through 39. Clearly, it was nighttime when this is called a day. Yahshua said today, Kepha. And this is when Judas Iscariot, after the supper, was told to go out, for he was about to betray Yahshua. It was definitely, because now they've gone to the mount, it was definitely dark. It was definitely nighttime. Verses 34 through 38. And he said, I say to you, Kepha, the cock shall not crow at all today, this day, until you have denied 3 times that you know me. And he said to them, when I sent you without purse and bag and sandals, did you lack anything? And they said, none at all. And he said to them, but now let him who has a purse take it, likewise also a bag. And let him who has no sword sell his garment one by one. For I say to you that what has been written has yet to be accomplished in me. And he was reckoned with lawless ones, for that which refers to me has an end as well. Has an end too. And they said, Master, look, here are 2 swords. But he said to them, that is enough. And having come out, he went to the Mount of Olives. Clearly, if you go back and read chapter 13 and 14, this is the time period where Judas Iscariot was sent out to betray him, and then it was night. It's nighttime now. It's dark. And he just said, I tell you this day, showing you that there is a nighttime part of the day and a daylight part of the day, a 24-hour period. And we're going to see why it's inappropriate to watch for the sun to come up. It's inappropriate. It's wrong. It's not right in order to begin your Shabbat. There's many other things I want to connect to this, but I'm going to connect to one prophecy in a warning to the people who are celebrating daylight to daylight Sabbath keeping. Or as they want to call it, they try to reword it and call it dawn to dusk or dawn to dawn, however they're doing it. Again in verse 39, and coming out, he went to the Mount of Olives according to usage, and his taught ones also followed him. So this is definitely during the dark hours, and he said, today, Kepha, you will betray me 3 times. Before they sound the shofar, the temple crier, the cock crowing 3 times, was the temple crier opening the temple for worship the next morning. Part of the day that Yahshua just, and having, oh, I don't want to give myself, yeah, we'll just continue here. So clearly today he was spoken about at night by the Mashiach. Okay. Now, this person also said, I've taken offense to you calling Sabbath keeping from daylight to daylight ancient sun worship. I'm going to refer you to one source, and I'm going to. Now, most people, when they heard the temple crier, when they heard the shofar blast, meaning that the temple courts were now open for morning gatherings. All right. It's very important to understand that they would have been facing the temple. Everybody's walking to the temple. Ezekiel chapter 8. Beginning at verse 3. Yehezkel chapter 8, beginning at verse 3. And he stretched out the form of a hand and took me by a lock of my hair, and the Spirit lifted me up between the earth, the Eretz, and the Shemayim, and brought me in visions of Elohim to Yerushalayim. He's showing him visions of Yerushalayim. To the door of the north gate of the inner court, where the seat of the image of jealousy was, which causes jealousy. And see, the esteem of the Elohim of Israel was there, like the vision that I saw in the plain. And he said to me, son of, I don't like using son of man, I'm going to say Elohim. Son of Elohim, please lift your eyes toward the north. And I lifted my eyes northward, and north of the altar gate I saw the image of jealousy in the entrance. And he said to me, son of Elohim, do you see what they are doing? The great abominations which the house of Yisrael are doing here, driving me away from my set apart place. and you are to see still yet a greater abominations. Let's look at verse 12. And he said to me, Son of Elohim, have you seen what the elders of the house of Yisrael are doing in the dark, each one in the room of his idols? For they say, Yahweh does not see us, Yahweh has forsaken the land. And he said to me, you are to see still greater abominations which they are doing. Verse 14, and he brought me to the door of the north gate of the house of Yahweh, and I saw women sitting there weeping for Tammuz, which is a sun deity. Then he said to me, have you seen this, O son of man, O son of Elohim? You are still to see greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court of the house of Yahweh, and there at the door of the temple, at the door of the Hekal of Yahweh, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs toward the temple of Yahweh and their faces towards the east. And they were bowing themselves eastward to the sun. And he said to me, have you seen, O son of Elohim? Is it a small matter to the house of Yehudah to do the abominations which they have done here? For they have filled the land with violence and turned back to provoke me, and see, they are putting the branch to my nose. Clearly, Yahshua said during the nighttime, today, Kepha, I tell you, that, or I tell you, when it was night, that today you will deny me 3 times. The sun had come up when he denied him. It was the same day. The sun had went down. Everything was going as Yahshua had, he knew when his hour had come. And everything leading up to that time period has to do with a 24-hour period beginning in the evening. He went in the tomb in the evening, and he rose at the end of the 7th. He went in the tomb when the sun was going down, which started a high Sabbath, right? And he rose when the sun was going down on the 7th day Sabbath. That's exactly what the Greek text shows. That's exactly what the Hebrew text shows. And that's why I have said that ancient sun worship is bringing itself back into our belief system. We just came out of ancient sun worship through Christianity. And here comes another curveball, dragging everybody right back into the same stuff. What are you doing on Easter Sunday, people?
Mhm.
You better look at this the way Yahweh looks at it. We need to study the manuscripts from which the English Bibles came. These people at this covenant calendar, these covenant calendar groups, are leading you astray with English words. They're creating a doctrine, and it's deceiving people by the hundreds, thousands. Father, be with us.